Hello students, once again welcome back to our biology class. Myself Dr. Ravindra here. In the last class, we studied about the introductory points related with what is biodiversity. It is the existence of the variety of creatures or variations of the living forms on this earth we call it the biodiversity. And earth is the only planet where we can find the life. And who popularized this term biodiversity? It is Edward Wilson. Fine. So, we studied that there are around 3 lakh beetles, 20,000 orchids, 20,000 ants, 28,000 of fish species. Like this, if we keep on counting, there may be millions and millions of species, yes, what we can find. That is what we say the global biodiversity. So, global biodiversity is also depend on the different type of geographic regions, what we called as the types of biodiversity and the type of the plant or the animal also. That we have studied in the earlier class. There is a species diversity, right? There is what we can say ecological diversity. There is a genetic diversity also we studied. Fine. In today's class, we will study about global diversity as well as Indian diversity and then patterns of biodiversity distribution also. Fine. So, when we talk about the global biodiversity, yes, global biodiversity, biodiversity. According to Robert May, the scientist, the ecologist, according to, yes, according to Robert May, said that, so stated there may be around 7 million species, 7 million species living. So, but as per IUCN, so it is mainly international, so international, yes, union for conservation of nature, okay, yes, 2004, okay. So IUCN, mainly the Union for Conservation of Nature 2004, stated that reported there are 1.5 million species living, okay, living as such. So this is what we can say difference of opinion between the Robert May as well as the IUCN. So even there is one more important organization, Red Data Book. Yes, mainly it is the work of IUCN only, what we can say Red Data Book also says that. Thus, so there are mainly we can say that 71% is the animal species and 22% are the plant species. And the global, whatever the biodiversity or the all living creatures what we consider, in that this is what the information mainly the what we can say the global biodiversity as such. So when we keep on understanding regarding the biodiversity, then which will be the maximum and which will be the minimum number of species in a different category of plants and animals. So a study or a survey says that, so the biodiversity of we can say that animals, biodiversity of animals, mainly it says that the highest number is mainly insects. So insects are the highest, then other organisms comes next, then comes mainly the mollusca, then comes mainly the crustaceans. crustaceans. Why the insects stands number one in their population? Because of their high adaptability and high fecundity. High fecundity means a high ability of reproduction. So thus, a survey also says that out of 10 species of animals, okay, so out of 10 animals, yes, out of 10 animals, 7 are the, yes, mainly out of 10 animals, 7 are insects only. Okay, so out of 10 animals, when we take account of all this, yes, 7 animals will be the insects only, because of their high ability of adaptation, high ability of reproduction also we can say. Then, so biodiversity of vertebrates. So when we talk about biodiversity of vertebrates, yes. So when we talk about vertebrates, fish stands first. Okay, fish comes first. Next comes mainly. So after the fish, the next highest is mainly birds. Next comes reptiles. Next comes mainly mammals. Mammals and amphibians. Almost equal number of species, amphibians. So this is the scenario of vertebrates, biodiversity. So when we talk about biodiversity of plants, let us understand biodiversity of plants. So highest species are fungi. Okay, then comes mainly what we can say that angiosperms, the flowering plants, angiosperms. Then comes algae. Okay, then comes mosses. Okay, then comes the fern. Then comes the lichens. So this is the biodiversity of the plants. Mainly the fungi, as such they are chlorophyllous and they can be parasites of the plants and animals also. Their number is usually higher. Angiosperms are flowering. They can bribe the insects and birds and animals also for the sake of their pollination. They have high ability of reproduction, angiosperms. Then comes the algae. Yes, they are found in the marine condition or water or the ocean. They are again more. Mainly the mosses, or we can say that the bryophytes, then the pteridophytes, right? So mosses, then the ferns, again the higher pteridophytes, then the lichens. Lichens are mainly the symbiotic association of the fungi as well as algae. So these also forms mainly the most important what you can say biodiversity of the plants. So thus what we have seen, the biodiversity in the animals and mainly vertebrates. So the biodiversity of the plants. So here we can say that the protozoans, what these are? Unicellular eukaryotes. Unicellular eukaryotes. So there is no any account about the protozoans as such. The unicellular eukaryotes difficult to culture also, and so they are delineated, means not taken into proper account, delineated. This is about the biodiversity among the plants as well as the animals what we have seen. So that is about mainly the biodiversity as such. So when we talk about mainly the global biodiversity according to the Robert May, so he stated that there may be around 7 millions of species. But as per the IUCN as well as Red Data information, it says that in 2004 only they reported 1.5 million species still exist. So there are 71% of them are the animals and 22% of them are the plants. Now when I am talking about biodiversity in the animals, insects stands number 1 in the position because of their high ability of reproduction, high ability of adaptation. They can be what you can say eco-friendly, they can be parasites also, okay. So they adjust with a variety of fluctuating conditions. Insects are highest, then other organisms. That includes mainly the vertebrates, we can say. Then comes the mollusca, then comes the crustacea. This order is very, very important. You need to remember. So they may give it in the form of pie chart also, or they may give in the form of this linear statement also. So you need to remember this. Then out of every 10 animals, there are 7 are the insects only. That means the population is very high. Biodiversity of vertebrates, when we look, the fish mainly the highest because they are existing in all the sort of water. It may be the fresh water, it may be the marine water also. They forms the number 1 because of their high chances of reproducing more. And then birds comes next. So they also adjust for various kind of conditions and survive well. Reptiles comes next. After that mammals, and then least is actually amphibians. So this is what we can say the sequence from higher to the lower number of species what you are observing. Biodiversity of the plants as such, fungi or chlorophyllus, they can be the parasite of plants as well as animals, and they also more in number. Then angiosperms, then the algae, then the mosses, then the fern, and then lichens. Then protozoans here, yes, mainly they are unicellular eukaryotes, difficult to culture them also, and it is unable to be studied very well as such to keep an account of that, so they are delineated, we can say. Now let us understand mainly, we can say that let us understand the biodiversity of mainly the India. So Indian biodiversity also we are going to discuss now. So global biodiversity we have studied as such. Indian biodiversity, how India is to be so diversified country because of its different geographic regions, we can say. So India has a different geographic conditions, geographic regions. So let us understand the Indian biodiversity. India is one among 12 mega biodiversities of the world. Biodiversity. Okay? Biodiversity spots. Then India has 2.4% land, okay, of the globe. Then India has 8.1% animal species of world. Okay, so yes, we can say that according to Robert May, yes, he gave the statement that India has 3 lakh animal species and 1 lakh plant species yet to be discovered. Okay, so this is what we can say. India has 3 lakh animal species and 1 lakh plant species yet to be discovered. So this is what we can say that Indian biodiversity as such. So India possesses nearly 3 lakh of plant species and 1 lakh of animal species yet to be discovered. So, yes, it is mainly here what we can say that so far there are around 22% of animal species discovered. So far, only 22% animal species discovered. This is what we talk all about Indian biodiversity. So, compared to the global biodiversity, this is the scenario of Indian biodiversity. It is one among the 12 mega biodiversity spots. India has 2.4% of the land. India has 8.1% of the animal species of the whole world. And then according to the Robert May, he concluded that India is having nearly around 3 lakh animal species, 1 lakh plant species yet to be discovered. And so far discovered animal species are hardly 22% only. So this is all about what we say regarding the Indian biodiversity. So we need to understand now the next concept what we are going to discuss is all about patterns of biodiversity. So let us go ahead with the patterns of biodiversity. So that is also quite interesting concept, the patterns of biodiversity. So what is the different type of pattern? Means the distribution of the life or the species has a different pattern. That's what we call as patterns of biodiversity. Well, what actually the condition defines or decides the distribution of species? It's all the geographic conditions and adaptations of both species to different geographic conditions. That mainly defines the distribution of a species. So when talk about patterns of biodiversity or its distribution as such, we have to understand three important mainly the concepts. This based on the latitudinal gradients. Then another pattern is mainly Amazon forest, Amazon biodiversity. We need to understand. The third is species area relationship. Species area relationship. This is given by Alexander von Humboldt. That also we are going to discuss. When I talk about latitudinal gradients, what is that? So, what do you mean by latitudes? Let me tell you, when we say this is our earth. So, the earth has equator. Okay, equator. So, here the Tropic of Cancer. Tropic of Cancer. And here we find Tropic of Capricorn. Tropic of Capricorn. Capricorn. You can't find these lines physically. These are the imaginary lines which are horizontal lines. We call them as latitudes. So the horizontal imaginary lines we call them as latitudes. The horizontal imaginary lines. So they are mainly latitudes. We call them as latitudes. So latitudes, yes, and here it is the North Pole and here it is the South Pole. And Earth is not exactly like this. Earth is, we can say that it is tilted. So Earth is tilted mainly 23.5 degree. Okay, here also 23.5 degree from the central axis. Okay, from the central axis. Because of this tilt, 23.5 degree tilt, we can say, yes, this is the tilt. This tilt is very essential, that brings about the variations in the climatic conditions, or that brings the seasonal changes. The tilt is the response for the seasonal variations, that brings seasonal variations. Seasonal variations means what? So North Pole, when he is facing the summer, South Pole has the winter. When North Pole has the winter, South Pole will be having the summer. This kind of a fluctuation in the seasons because of the tilt from the central axis. The tilt is 23.5 degree. So how this kind of conditions mainly influence the distribution of the organisms? So let me tell you, the region here, what you are observing, this region means from equator up to the Tropic of Capricorn, from the equator up to the Tropic of Cancer, this region is called as a tropic region or tropical zone. Tropical zone. This tropical zone has highly balanced, we can say that, temperature, rain, humidity, all that. So fluctuation is very less, but consistency is more. Because of that, diversity of the animal species or plant species are higher towards the equator. The biodiversity declines towards the poles. So one important statement, yes, you need to note down that. So as such, mainly the latitudinal distribution or latitudinal gradients also influences better, what we can say, mainly the distribution of plants or the animals. Thus we can say that biodiversity higher in tropical region, what it is called as mainly towards equator, and it declines towards the poles. As we move away from the equator, biodiversity decreases. As we come towards the equator, biodiversity increases. This is what we say. And why? Because mainly the tropical region has mainly the highly balanced kind of temperature as well as the rainfall that favors the more growth of the plants. When the vegetation is very high, definitely there is a existence of the high number of birds as well as the insects and other species. So to give you an example, when you say that the Greenland, comparison I am giving you, Greenland and then New York. So Greenland and New York is mainly USA, Greenland is yes, extreme towards the North Pole, we can say that. So here the position of the Greenland, so it is 71 degree towards the north. Here it is a 41 degree towards the north. So as such, when we talk about the number of species, so what is the number of species? The bird species here, only 56 species of the birds. As such, in the New York we can find that there are around 104 species of birds. So this is what we can say that yes, that towards more you are the polar region or you are away from the polar region, the species increases. Towards the polar region, yes, the number of bird species or number of the living organisms decreases. Again, one more simple example as such. When you say there is a country Colombia, yes, Colombia has 1400 bird species. Okay, whereas India has somewhere around 1200 bird species. This is what we say, mainly the diversity that favors mainly the difference in the number of species that can be existing over there. So what we talk all about mainly, this is what we are discussing, the pattern, how these latitudes mainly influence the number of species. So as such, when you talk about one more important point, that is, there is a country called as Ecuador. So in the South America, yes, the country comes exactly on the equator. So Ecuador has 10 times more species richness than Midwest America. So this is what are the examples they quote. It says that it all mainly the geographic condition that favors the species richness or biodiversity. So latitudinal gradients means these are the imaginary horizontal lines. It can be Tropic of Cancer, it can be equator, it can be Tropic of Capricorn. So the zone between equator to the Tropic of Cancer and up to the Tropic of Capricorn, this is called a tropical zone. And then beyond, we can say that here the temperate zone. Beyond this, what we talk about, it's all the temperate zone. Temperate. And extreme to the pole, it is a polar region. So ice cold or freezing condition will be there. More temperature and more favorable conditions are well maintained in the tropical region. That's why species richness is very high in the tropical region. That's why the statement says that biodiversity is higher in the tropical region. Means towards the equator as we move, more species richness. Away from the equator we move towards the pole, species richness declines. So the 71 degree north, the Greenland location. 41 degree north is the mainly what we say, it is the location of the New York. The number of bird species 56 as well as 104 species respectively. Means number of species are lesser here in the Greenland because it's towards the more colder zone. So it is more favorable, it has a higher. As such, Colombia has a more what we can say the favorable conditions for the survival of birds. 1400 species of birds we can find. India has 1200 species of birds. And then Ecuador is a country which is located on the equator, mainly in the South America. It has 10 times more species richness than that of the Midwest America. Why? Because Midwest America has mainly the cold region and not much favorable conditions like that of the equator. So these are what we can say most important points you need to remember. So now let us understand regarding the species richness of Amazon forest. So Amazon biodiversity we will understand now. So Amazon forest you may be knowing, yes. So number of scientists have been studying Amazon forest, and it is most what you can say the thick forest, and it is also called as the lungs of the earth. So biodiversity of Amazon, biodiversity of Amazon. So in the Amazon, what are the different types of species we can find there? Mainly we can find the plant species, plants as such 40,000. Okay, then fish species nearly around 3,000. Okay, then mainly the bird species we can find 1,300. Then mainly here we can find the plants, fish, birds, mainly the mammals. Yes, mammals as such 427 species, number of species here. Then amphibians amphibians also of the same number, 427 species. Then we can find mainly these plants, fish, birds, then amphibians and reptiles. Yes, reptiles as such 378 species. Okay, insects we can find here 1,25,000 species. Okay, so number of insects yet to be identified. Number of insect species yet to be identified in Amazon is around 2 million species. Okay, this is the species richness of Amazon forest, what we are observing. Well, in the next class we will be discussing more about different concepts related with this chapter. Till then, take care and study well. Thank you very much.